Deepa, welcome to the Indian Collegiate Startup Week. A huge warm welcome from all the students who have posed their questions, and they're terribly excited about this particular session, which is how global businesses are built, because almost every student wants to build a business in their startup which goes global. And we are truly grateful and thankful for the time that you've removed. We know how busy you are, and the regional role that you have is one of immense responsibility. So at the outset, our deepest thanks and gratitude from all of us here at the Indian Collegiate Startup Week.
It's my pleasure. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Deepa, the first question, we have a total of 4 questions which have been the most common questions asked by students. The first one is, what is the distinction between local and global businesses in this startup economy?
A very interesting question, but I think when I view it, I really bring it back to basics. Why are you in business? What is the problem that you are trying to solve, right? So I think it's very important to think of that. What is your value proposition? And therefore, in my view, every business idea has to be very, very local. But what is also true is sometimes what we are trying to solve is a very universal problem. It can also be a very local problem that you're trying to solve. And while solving a very local problem, you arrive at a place where you've found a way to do something better than it has ever been done. And that expertise can then travel across regions, across countries, across the world, and the ideas become bigger. But I think essentially when you're sitting at a place where you're starting out, I think you have to ask yourself the question, what is the need that I am trying to serve? What is the problem that I'm trying to solve? What is the gap in the market that is unfulfilled? What is the experience that doesn't exist? And so, today we take it for granted that we touch screens, for example. Even a young kid these days will try to touch every screen and try to swipe, right? But that wasn't existing. So there are companies and there are products and there are innovations that come and tell us how we should be doing things. So if you have an idea like that, then it needs to start, might start local, but it has it can be infectious enough to travel the world and make sense. So I think essentially for a startup economy, the basic question is very existential. You need to know what is it that you're trying to serve and what is the problem that you're trying to answer.
It's such a lucid and simplistic way of explaining it. It's amazing, very helpful, really helpful, because our audience is taking its first baby steps in the world of setting up their company. So this is going to be really helpful. Deepa, the second question that we have is, as someone who steers an immensely valuable global brand, what is your business approach towards growing the brand in different markets?
Michelle, my experience has been that even though we look for scale, what we have to recognize as marketeers, as people opening new markets or developing the businesses, that there is an immense diversity of a consumer base that you are trying to address. So you cannot take So what does a brand stand for? Brand has a particular identity. It is an expression or a guarantee of a certain experience. It also is positioned in a certain way, and the position is arrived at through different things in how it communicates itself. What are the codes of the brand? What is the target segment? What is the price point, etc., etc. So my recognition, even in such an established brand with nearly 200-year history, is still that when you come down to opening a market and expanding the brand, you really first have to look at the market. So I don't have a same approach for each market. market, I really need to understand what is the base level of knowledge that exists, what are the drivers of the clients in each market. And you'd be surprised, I mean, even though I only run Asia, each market is so distinctively different. Then you also see that if, I'm not the brand that I'm doing is not the first brand that is entering the market either. So you also have to look at the history that exists in the market of work that has happened already in creating an awareness for a particular category. So I don't know, let's just say you're looking at sportswear, or you're looking at, you need to know what is the ecosystem that is in existence. And then you have to look at what is the go-to-market strategy for those brands. What have they done in establishing the distribution network? What have they done to give consumers the experience of that category? What is the knowledge level that exists? What is the degree of appreciation clients have? And then you've got to define your starting point. Do you start from the bottom or you start from the top? I recognize that sometimes you have to tailor your strategy to what is the easiest route that you can pick, because you need to win your ambassadors in the market. The first few people who are going to wear the brand or carry the brand or be the ones who are having the user experience, and then they become the ambassadors for the brand as well. So I don't think there is one strategy to be had. And to say that in a market that you've already been in for many years, it could also be a chance to enter the market and say, well, this approach doesn't work. We need to get back to the drawing board and re-strategize. So even in a market where you've been present for many decades, you can have a completely different strategy and then say, well, this is what it's going to look like in 5 years. And so we are completely changing. Of course, to everything, there is a cost attached. So you also have to know what is the amount of effort, time, resources that you profit business. So you have to know, how does the chain benefit in the entire. So there are many different things to weigh in before you kind of define how am I going to enter this market and how I'm going to develop it further.
Really insightful, Deepa. And just a small side question to this, while listening to you, just popped up in my head that what would you advise a marketeer or who is steering his or her brand? What should be the runway of marketing planning that someone should do? So, for example, if now we're sitting in April, which month or which year should the planning be taking place right now, ideally?
Yeah, so ideally, I really feel that the year that you are already in is running too fast, right? Because you're already, when the clock resets itself, I mean, that's my experience. You think you're closing a year, but actually the very next day, your clock is back to zero and you're restarting. So for my own planning purposes, I do, for anything that I run, I do a 3 to 5 years mapping. And it's not ideal because, the things are changing so fast that you have to revisit all of those planning and visits. But if I did not have the 5-year plan in place that was guiding me, I would have completely felt lost. You just change some aspects because certain things are not possible because now travel didn't happen. But that doesn't mean that I did not do the retail changes that I needed to do, even they had to be done remotely. You need to know you need to switch up your training that is online. We didn't have that focus. It was all in person. So we need to make that switch. We needed to deepen our engagement with our partners where, we would occasionally do, when we would visit the market, we would have formal lunches and dinners, but that was not possible. You now needed to really spend time on a conversation which was virtual, but how to change some aspects because certain things are not possible. So you have to adapt that strategy. That doesn't mean that I did not do the retail when can you engage back in the market and face-to-face interaction with clients. You need to know still not possible for 2 years. But all of that is just an iteration that you undertake because circumstances are not exactly what you planned for. But my planning cycle is 3 to 5 years, at least for the big goals. Where do I want to get this market in terms of knowledge? Do I need to know my top 100 clients? Do I need to really start at the base of technical knowledge? Do I anticipate that there is going to be a service position needed? I mean, all that needs to be a 3 to 5 year cycle. I have to say that my even extra focus is 3 years, because 5 is also looking a little bit fuzzy in time of great change. So 3 years, I do a little bit more microscopic. I even overemphasize the next 3 years, because 3 years is like that for me. The year that you're in, you're executing. There's no planning that is happening. So you're really actually, in my head, I'm already doing the budget for next year. So I know what the numbers are going to look, what is going to be my key initiatives. And the actual year I'm thinking about is the third year. So it's this 3 year planning cycle, which sits in a 5 year horizon, is what works better for me because of the nature of the markets, the speed of change. And, in the end, I've realized that rather than over planning too many things, it's better to plan tightly, but make sure that you execute, because anything is built in layers. Nothing is built in 1 year cycle. So I think there is, we don't realize that every day is the beginning of a year and every day is ending of a year as well. So I think just recognizing that and making sure that the touch points that you wanted in the year were achieved. And then you say, okay, these are the 3 things that I was aiming for this market, and that's what I've achieved, or for the team or for the organization, I think it works better for me. I kind of have a greater sense of achievement in that, rather than a very Jan to December kind of cycle and say, did I reach that number, that profitability? All that happens because of the result of all the planning that we do.
Really, really immensely helpful. Thank you so much, Deepa, and thank you for being so candid and sharing your planning strategy. The third question that we have is, could you please share any one challenge that you faced while heading a regional business, and how did you tackle it?
There are many challenges in the business, and I think, if I were to make it regional, I've started to understand that, it's going back to this realization that nothing gets built overnight. Everything takes time. And, the tendency for us to overfeed what is already successful is very, very high. So I kind of have to, and I realize that, we keep feeding, it's like keep feeding the beast, right? It goes bigger and it's successful, and it just makes sense to put more things in that category. But I've become conscious of the fact that you have to also nurture what doesn't seem like a promising area right now. But if you completely neglect it, because of course there is constraint on time and resources. So I'm conscious of the 70-30 mix now, that there are markets that are below par right now, but they have potential. Because how do I know they have potential? Because I understand the demographic, I understand the big trend, that things are in this direction, but it's a little bit of a slow burn and it's going to take a little bit longer getting there. But neglecting to put consistently time, energy, resources, effort is not going to nothing is going to change. And you're sort of leaving that opportunity and that window that you see right now, but it's going to be not yours to take, it's going to be someone else's to take. So I think one of the challenges of regional market is, because the year runs so fast, because there is, when you do something at a high level, it requires that much. It doesn't matter small work or big work, but everything is about details. Then getting those wins is very, very crucial. And the second thing about regional markets I've learned is that you need to, I feel that I need to replicate myself in the market. And my one visit is not going to cut it. My team's 3 visits is not going to cut it. So I think you need to build people who understand what you're trying to achieve, understand, who can speak the language, who can be, even like, they say even when I'm sleeping, someone is doing that work, right? Is talking about the brand, is going the last mile, is in conversation with someone to really tell the story, to tell the. So I feel like a big part is required in regional businesses to devote to build these like-minded individuals who would be carrying the storytelling in the market, and that has helped me to sort of hasten the process of introducing and deepening the engagement with the market. Because if I just rest it all to a regional office and centralize everything, I think my life is too short to achieve any of this. So I think it's something that I also encourage the team a lot, to say that your role is not to just direct them. Your role is to make sure that they're equipped in their understanding of what you're trying to achieve. Because then when you are here, okay, you can make 2 visits and you can have see it for yourself, but eventually you're back in the regional headquarters and you've got to have somebody who's thinking, breathing, doing this even when you're not there. And how to incentivize, how to make sure that these people they feel rewarded in that engagement, I think is something that I ask all the time.
It's so wonderful to see that you have in your answer also layered the solution. So there's a layering of mentorship, incentives, creating assets which are on the ground, and especially that part about making sure that someone is advocating the brand and the brand never sleeps. So beautiful, lovely, really amazing way to put the answer forward. Thank you. And coming to the last question, this is a simple one, but I think is extremely important for students, that considering that most of the viewers are all in college, what advice would you give them on what should they focus on right now whilst they are in college as they are building their startups?
I think, Shell, it's so beautiful that when you are not weighed down by what is successful, what is established, what is done, to have this whiteboard to create things, right? So I would first start by saying that there should be no limit to their imagination at this point in time. Everything that we know as success, as we see it, was thought in somebody's mind. The fact that Eiffel Tower exists was in somebody's head first. Or anything that sort of really amazes us. When we look at successful companies, where we see, there's this $1 trillion company, and we say, oh my God, how did they get there? I mean, of course, it started with a simple idea that we need to have, best collection of books available to the world anywhere, right? But then, of course, you can't get married to the essential idea, in the sense that the idea iterates itself. The more energy that the idea gets through actions, results, the surprises that will come along the way, where the way you're trying to establish the business, but the value that people are seeing is for a different area. So you have to be able to really hear that feedback, to see that feedback. Of course, if it's in numbers and the feedback is black and white, right? It tells you this is successful and this is not successful. But I think often we get too married to the idea to say, oh, this is it. This was my conception and this is how I wanted to do. But think of any brand that started, at the core, it's still trying to solve the same problem, but it's not married to doing it in a particular way. And then because of doing something well, other opportunities present. Then you have to iterate and say yes. And so you're always in the business standing at this fork, yes or no, left or right, blue pill, red pill. But you have to be ready to put your conviction to play and say, well, this is how I'm going to go with it. And yes, be able to, sorry, I just need some water. But yes, to be able to say, okay, this is a dead end here, and maybe I need to adapt and change things. So I would really also say that be open to the change that will come. So in that sense, take the first steps and don't just get too bogged down by that everything that you do should be a success, because there will be some misses along the way as well.
After listening to you speak, there's one side question I just want to put in there, because this will be extremely helpful to students, that considering that the roles that you or the caps or the hats that you wear span an entire spectrum, it is leadership, it is mentorship, it is operations, marketing, etc. How should, in your opinion, someone bifurcate their time? Should it be done clinically? Should it be done organically? How can one really realize that I do need to devote some time to recruitment, to programming, to product development? How do you do it yourself, or how would you recommend the students should start thinking of multiple facets of their business?
I think I have to say that, Shell, that I'm at a sort of a disadvantageous position when I talk about, because I don't create businesses, but I'm trying to really think of that in an entrepreneur. I think there is a lot that is at stake, and of course, the tendency is to over-focus on creating the offering. But I think because there's limit on time, very little is done to talk about it to people and to share. And I think there is almost like a reward mechanism in perfecting the idea. But I think from the business side of it, I feel like even today, if you're a team of 80 people, I feel like everyone should be selling, everyone should be storytelling, everyone should be. So how do you build that? I think for a small startup should be very crucial, because I think I see a lot of young entrepreneurs get so obsessed with the idea that they have, or the product that they have, or refining it, that not many are actually out there doing the storytelling, because every idea needs to replicate itself. The speed of replication of that idea is going to depend on how many people talk about it in what context. So I have a feeling that the creative, the entrepreneur's mind and drive is also sometimes very isolated in their own heads, and then there's a deep attachment. So I think the entrepreneurship should be an absolute act of detachment as well, where it's, yes, the idea was yours, but there's so many ideas that came and they died a natural death because there was no one to carry them forward. An idea is only good if you really feel that you start to see it take root, and then you see it get replicated in another market. There are 5 more happy clients with it. So I do think that even though we look for speed and efficiency, the early parts of a journey is always a little bit more, one conversion at a time, one person at a time. And how can you get that circle around you that's going to further tell 2 or 3 other people, and then how they're going to. I think that concentric circles is very, very important and it's a slightly slow placed in the beginning because you're putting the seed, but then it needs to hasten, because if you do a good job of really telling the story and making that experience happen, or letting them see the win, then the idea takes roots very, very quickly. And then the speed, there's a fundamental, it's like, when do you cross that sonic barrier? Like, when do you, that's when it just is, then it's not yours anymore. Then it belongs in a different set. So I think the early stage ideas are still very much around the person who's creating it, but is he or she able to tell the story in a way that is going to resonate with more people? Looking for resonance is going to be very important, and therefore looking at people who will then further tell the story is crucial.
As they say that true wisdom is when you explain difficult to understand concepts in a very simple manner, and that's what you've done. It's so wonderful to just hear these thoughts and these opinions that you've shared, and I think they're going to go a long way with the students. And on behalf of the Indian Collegiate Startup Week, I thank you immensely for being so candid and for giving us so much of your valuable time. And we hope to have you with us in person in the next edition of the event. But till then, thank you a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shell. Thank you, Parvi. Very nice to meet both of you. My pleasure to have the conversation. Thank you.